Over the last year, Nigerian technology startups have raised more funding from venture capital, attracting nearly a quarter of the $5.2 billion invested in African startups. Against the backdrop of this funding boom, the share of investments going to female-owned tech startups stood at about 6.5%, which means just one in every $15 raised in the African startup ecosystem goes to women-owned tech ventures. Jessica Anuna is CEO of Clasha, a cross-border fintech company that allows merchants outside the continent scale into Africa and accept payments in African currencies.
For us, African consumers right now struggle to access global goods and services. So I can't go on Zara.com, for example, or H&M or ASOS and pay in Naira and get fast delivery to the continent. So essentially, Clasha allows consumers in Africa to pay in Naira, get fast delivery. They don't have to worry about conversion or FX fees, and essentially use the money method of their choice. It was a very selfish pursuit. I moved back to Nigeria a few years back, and I wasn't able to access the goods I was used to accessing in other frontier OECD economies. So I was really struggling to access, things like online stores, global goods, services that I was used to because they just weren't delivering to the continent. So I started Clasha to, fill that void and to really solve for that problem here on the continent. And while I was here, I noticed a lot of diasporans and other young Africans were facing the same challenges of getting access to global goods on the continent, and that's where the story derived from, and that's how we started. So when we first started the company in 2018, we raised from Techstars, which is an accelerator based in the US, and they have different arms. One in Dubai, we raised about $120,000. Last year, we raised our seed round of 2.1 million, and this year we raised an additional 2.4 million.
With fewer female-led startups being pitched for equity financing, many founders have explored alternative financing paths, with a preference for bank loans and retained earnings, while others have merged domain expertise with male counterparts. Chioma Ugo is co-founder of Prosper, a financial operating system that aids quick and easy business bank account activations for entrepreneurs. She believes female founders shouldn't limit their thinking to a partnership solely for funding purposes.
Having a male business partner definitely has advantages. And I'm sure if you spoke to my co-founder, he will say that having a female co-founder definitely has its advantages as well. That being said, I would still be doing what I'm doing now, and I still would have raised funds with or without a male co-founder. I know that the number around women-led businesses being funded are shockingly low. So for example, last year, only 2.3% of all funding, and that's globally in this industry, went to women. But I also know that there are a lot more male investors who are open or becoming more and more open to funding women-led businesses. Our mission is to empower African entrepreneurs in building financial prosperity. In Nigeria, for example, SMEs contribute over 40% of the national GDP, and they account for over 90% of all businesses and 84% of employment. I think if you really want to change the continent, you really want to empower communities, then you definitely need to start with entrepreneurs. And that's one of the reasons why we started Prosper.
Female founders in non-fintech sectors experience a different kind of challenge as these sectors attract even less funding. Ife Oluwadare Johnson runs Health Tracker, a digital health platform democratizing access to medical diagnostics. She can relate to this reality.
One of the things I realize is, number one, people don't take you as seriously at first, because I remember people talk about health tech and say, oh, there are lots of women in health tech. Oh, maybe it's because women have nurturing and all. But when it's time to fund health tech founders, the biggest ones goes to the men who are in health tech, right? So which is kind of like, almost hypocritical, right? If you say women are nurturing, then why are you not funding them? I remember one of the calls after showing how the business model and all of that, this is what we've done, this is traction, this potential investor looked straight into the camera and said, so what's your family situation like? And I'm like, I was confused for a moment, like, what does that mean? Like, you're married, right? You have kids. So if you have kids, how are you managing both, right? And that sounds very hard for me. Like, you would never ask a man that, right? Even if they have 20 children, it doesn't matter. I say it all the time that I think we're very lucky to have raised some funding for our business. And I say that because our first funding came from a VC firm focused on female founders, right? And that changed a lot of things because it meant early on we were able to prove ourselves that we could attract VC funding. Yeah, and it was easier for other people to follow. But not many people were as lucky. In fact, this female VC fund had just launched, right? So we were literally their first portfolio company, the first 4 companies that they funded at that time. I don't know, if we'll be here if that didn't happen, right? So I would say it's changing because we're beginning to see a lot more women on the other end of the table.
There's not a lot of representation, when it comes to female founders in the VC world. It's a very elitist world, and at times it can be very difficult to penetrate as a young founder, and maybe as a young female founder that hasn't been exposed to some of the inner workings and the network that the VC world has. I think that's one of the main, reasons that, women aren't able to penetrate, access to venture funding. Representation matters, and I think as more women join the VC world, then, we'll see more female founders being able to be funded. I think there's a handful of us now on the continent that have managed to raise over a certain amount of money, which is amazing. And I look forward to seeing more female founders funded as time goes on.
So as a nascent company, how would you assess the reception to your offering so far, comparatively across the markets that you currently operate in?
Given that Nigeria has the largest GDP on the continent, we are the fastest adopters of crypto globally as well, particularly in Africa. And, I think that has, really, we've been able to use that to our leverage because we've been able to scale quicker across the continent. In countries like Senegal and Ghana and Zambia, for example, because they're smaller countries, they may not have the infrastructure to do the type of business we're doing. So we're having to put the pieces of the puzzle together, particularly when it comes to regulation and compliance. And we're seeing that because a lot of what we're doing is nascent in these geographies, we're having to really spend more time in the market to try and ensure that we're, doing the right thing, speaking to the right customers, and also able to scale our technology sustainably in those countries too.
There are more and more women joining the tech industry every single day, and there are a lot more women who now see tech as a viable career path. I personally, as a female founder of Prosper, am incredibly excited about the opportunity to really make impact in the lives of millions of female entrepreneurs. I think the more women that we have in this space, the more women we have in the tech industry, the more opportunity that we have to really solve the issues that are unique to women in business.
So we created a platform that allows people to book their health checkup tests on our platform, have the test done at home, and then are able to speak to the doctor and review their results after the results is out. So that's basically what we're doing here at Health Tracker, where we're already going to see, how that impacts, the outcome of people's health.
With unique funding nuances in the industry, what influences VC's decisions in this regard? Gilbert Kiros co-runs Bezzy, a platform that helps founders with the necessary skill sets to grow and scale their respective companies.
One of the things we picked up during, the interview process is most of them didn't fully understand the process of building a company or the fundraising process. They're either asking too low, or they don't know how to talk about, how big this potential could be. And the other weakness also is attracting and retaining talent to build around it. So when you're building a company, you're building a team. People invest in the team, especially at the early stage. We really need more people of color and also women that are on the investing side, right? So this is this equation by itself. It's not just having great founders. It's making sure also there are a lot of women that can understand and support them, because again, their context and perspective matters, especially when you're investing. A lot of fundraising, honestly, is how strong your network is and the access you have to people who have money, or to those influential people who can facilitate your fundraising. Generally, people struggle to tap into that network, and there aren't that many investors that genuinely understand one domain, let alone the context in which it operates in Africa.
But for other market observers, there is the belief that the tide is turning way faster than the industry is aware of. Oluwanifemi Kolawole has been covering the African tech startup space for 3 years with TechPoint Africa.
So there's a series on TechPoint Africa. It's called Equity Merchants, where we interview investors, people that are on VC tables, that are leading VC firms in Nigeria, in Africa, and even outside Africa, VCs that are interested in African startups. We've interviewed these people, and the interesting part is that we've been doing this for over 1 year, and 60% of people we've interviewed are women. And that speaks to the fact that many more women are getting into investment. They are becoming managing partners in these investment firms, and they are making decisions. They're writing checks for who they want to give checks to, and it is encouraging. So the numbers might not be speaking yet, but we will definitely get there. I was surprised when an investor said, we're also pitching to startups. Right, I was surprised, but that is the fact. Because if I say I don't want your money, I don't want your money, I don't want you to be part of my dream, I don't want to be part of my baby, if that's what they call it, right? So it is a risk that everyone is taking. So you should be able to convince them that you know what you're doing.
So this is our customer care team. They're hard at work answering questions from customers. We really invest in swift responses, fast resolution time, and ensuring that our customers are getting the best service possible. We have about 45 team members. Not everybody works here in Lagos. We have people working remotely in Cape Town, in Dubai, and in London as well. But this is where our Lagos team sits.
Some of the people who are doing something similar to what we're doing in the Western world, they have mail infrastructure. Their transport system works way better. They are able to reach out. And if you ask medical professionals today, most of them are in the process of leaving the country. So these are some of the challenges that you probably don't find as much in other, parts of the world, but exist here, and we have to deal with it. We have to innovate despite it. We need to innovate around it. We need to be creative around it, and that's what we're trying to do.
One of the things that I'm very passionate about is ensuring that, at Prosper, we have women in decision-making positions. I know it's an open secret, right, that it's harder for women to raise money. One thing I always say to women who ask me is, listen, speak to as many investors as you can. It's a numbers game. And speak to investors who've invested in women previously.
I'm very conscious that I'm a woman in technology, and I'm one of the few women founders here on the continent really building at scale. But I really feel like I'm just somebody trying to make a difference and trying to, really provide value to our customers and our merchants. I'm aware of the responsibilities that come with being a woman in tech, representation, and really passing down the knowledge and paying it forward to other female founders, with the knowledge that I do have of raising money and scaling businesses and building teams and being an operator. But I don't like to use that as a vessel for how I'm proceeding on my journey as a CEO.
Every other young woman who's out there who's wondering, I have the skills, I have this idea, be able to have other people representation and say, there are a lot of women in tech. And that's the way I see that.
To me, the term women in tech means opportunity, it means empowerment, it means change. And more specifically, as a female founder of Prosper, it means that I have the opportunity to make a change, to make an impact in the financial industry, which is the bedrock of our society.
Abisola Owolawi for Raj News.